from agent to investor, building wealth through rentals. The first slide is talking about myself, just so you know what I'm talking about. I started in real estate in 2013. I was at the KW office in Edmond, then came down here, and then we started our own brokerage. I started Table Investments in the beginning of 2017, and the whole goal of it, make real estate investing simple. Mainly all we did was sell cash flowing properties to out-of-state investors. I already owned rentals. I bought my first rental at 19, which is kind of a long story, but lady I worked with went through a divorce. This was in 2009. She was like, I got this house and I don't want it anymore if I can't go there. And I said, well, you know, what do you want for it? She's like, if somebody just pay me the mortgage, I would just get rid of it. Well, the mortgage was only $45,000. And so I was 19 and I didn't know anything about real estate, but I was like, that sounds like a really good deal. It was a 2-bed, 2-bath on 4 acres, and I had horses at the time, so it already had a barn and all of that, and I bought it for $40,000, but I didn't have any money. So I went to every little bank in town, like begging them for money. The old man who was the president of this bank gave me a personal loan to buy my first place. It was $213 a month as my monthly payment. Then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it messed up my whole way of thinking, and I was like, this is an asset, I can rent this out. And I just put it on Craigslist for $1,200. People started calling. So I kind of accidentally got into rentals by myself. But I sold Table Investments at the end of 2019. I have a 3-year non-compete, so I don't have my license anymore, so I'm not competing with you guys or anything like that. Mainly all I do is coach and train other realtors and investors, but I still do deals in Lawton currently, and then I still own rentals here. I've got 2 flip places going in Lawton right now. I have some rentals there too, so I do a little bit of everything. And then just to show I've sold a lot of houses, there's all my production if you want to see that. So why should you want to even own rentals? Well, it's one of the best long-term investment strategies available. I mean, I feel like if you're in real estate, everybody kind of knows that everybody talks about rentals and blah, blah, blah. The problem is that there's not hardly anybody that teaches realtors what is a good deal. And that's why I started this class, because I mean, I remember even when I started, I didn't really know what one was. And so I'd have like my personal clients say like, hey, I want to buy a rental. And I'd be like, well, I guess you need a good school district. That was all I knew. And I have worked with so many people who they had a realtor that they trust help them get into a rental property, and then they look up a couple years later and they're like, this place costs me money every year. It's not cash flowing. And so that was kind of the point of starting this. Another reason to escape the rat race of constantly trying to find the next listing. I mean, that's our job every day. You gotta go find new clients, new listings, all of that. This is a way to get out of that as you get older. Owning single family rentals is the catalyst to bigger deals. When you look at like people that own these huge apartments or that own big commercial buildings, 99.9% of them started with one single family house. And then they bought another one, and they bought another one, and then you can leverage those into getting into bigger deals. So that's a big reason to start. And then so you can put your money to work for you. I mean, obviously we all kind of know what that one is. They are gonna require some money up front, obviously. But it's a passive investment strategy after you've had some time on them. So common myths that I wanted to go over before we start. Buying a rental will add additional income to me immediately. That's not true. Very, very rarely is that true. The truth is you need to be saving back any profits you make because they are extremely expensive to own, depending on the property. But I mean, this is what happens a lot of times is you buy a rental, and unless it's like a new construction or it was flipped, you're gonna either want to do some repairs to it yourself, or it's in kind of decent shape, tenants move in, stuff breaks. It just is. A really good rental property is gonna cash flow you $200 to $400 a month. A really good single family rental, that's gonna be your net. So at the end of the day, you have to be saving those profits back, because let's say if you're only making $200 a month and your AC unit goes out, that's 2 or 3 years of your profit gone just from one thing going out. So in the beginning, I see so many people that they buy a rental and they're like, hey, this just costs me money, I don't know what to do. Well, they are kind of expensive in the beginning until you get them stabilized, or you can just stabilize them right off the bat and then you don't really have to worry about it. But you are gonna have repairs that come up. So the best thing to do is just to plan on saving back any profits you're getting and not using that money to live off of, especially off your first one or two. Like I said, they're expensive. If you view them as a long-term investment strategy, that's where rentals really pay off until you get quite a few of them. So if you look at a rental as, this is just like my retirement account. So if you have a 401k, an IRA, you should be putting money into it every month, okay? So with a rental, it's the same thing, that it's actually paying you money every month, but on top of that, you're gaining equity, you're getting appreciation in the property, you're getting all these things that somebody else is paying off your property. So that long-term down the road, as the years build up, as the tenant keeps paying you, that's where you're really leveraging these properties and where they really pay off. Second thing is, owning rentals is extremely risky. Truth, while they can be expensive, if you buy the right kind of deal, you minimize your risk. Everybody, if you know anything about investment properties, they always say you make your money on the buy. So if you buy the property correctly, if you do the rehab right up front, that kind of stuff, you're minimizing your risk. And then the last one, being a landlord will take up too much of my time. The truth, if you hire a good property manager, they shouldn't take up hardly any of your time. I feel like there's different opinions on this, but I feel like you should hire a property manager right off the bat. There's so much that can go wrong. You don't want to be the one collecting rent when people don't pay. You don't want to be putting notices on doors that, hey, you're 30 days late, anything like. You don't want to get the call at 3 a.m. when the AC goes out and it's July, because that will happen, and it happened a lot this year. So I did property management for a long time, and it is the hardest way to make a living in real estate. You have to have a lot of properties. Brett knows what I'm talking about in this one. And it doesn't cost you that much money when you're owning a rental. I mean, typically it's gonna be like 10 to 12%. They're all kind of different, but like they're gonna charge you first month's rent, or at least part of first month's rent, to put a tenant in the property. In the big picture of things, the property manager is worth every dime, so that you actually have a passive investment strategy instead of you having to take up all that time.
I saw Curtis make a post on Facebook about that top one. Buying rental adds additional income immediately. And he made a post about how it's not true. That is the biggest myth. Most people watch YouTube or other gurus on the internet and they think, I'm going to buy 4 rentals and I'm going to quit my job. And
yes.
I heard a really good, someone on the internet actually telling the truth about it, and they're saying, you're not investing for today, you're investing for 10 years, because in 10 years with the pay down, the appreciation, and the rent raise, and all that stuff, you have options with that aspect. But the cash flow is like insulation to protect you from things that go wrong today. So don't think you're going to get cash flow and go buy things, because you're not. You're going to get cash flow, save it up, so that when something breaks, you don't have to pay it out of your personal account.
Yep.
If that makes sense. But that's the biggest thing that everyone on the internet thinks: buy 2 rentals, 3 rentals, buy a vacation home, something like that.
Yeah, and even if you don't have repairs, you want to be saving that money back so you can buy another. I mean, like with my rental income, I just pretend like it's not even there. I don't live off of it. I don't even think about it. It has a completely separate account. It goes in there, and it's just, I try to not even look at it, because the only thing that's there for is to pay for repairs and to buy another house. That's it. I'm not going to live off of that. And Brett's 100% right. It's the biggest mistake people make. Because even with all the properties we sold at my last company, we had people call a year later, hey, why is this costing me money? Why is this costing me money? I was planning on living off this, using this to live off of. And we're like, you should not do that. And we told you that up front, don't do this, but they still do it. And you guys will run into it too with people you help sell rentals to. If you don't warn them up front that, like, hey guys, don't try to live off this income, they're gonna call back and say they're mad. And they're gonna blame it on you every single time, because you know how it is. They do. Did you have anything else on that? I didn't want to cut you off either.
No, that just understanding that right away is not going to pay your bills.
Yep.
It's an investor for the future, not for today.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what we're talking about, identifying if a property will be a good investment or not. Does anybody in here, do you guys know what a pro forma is, or like the 1% rule, anything like that when it comes to rentals? Anybody? Okay. So we'll go over some of that. So the first thing you need to define what is a good deal to you. Because if we go through, all of this, identifying properties and all that, and at the end of this, we talk to everybody about what's a good deal to you, what's a good deal to you, everybody's answer is gonna be a little different. That's what, it always trips me up when somebody calls and says, yeah, if you get a good deal, call me. Well, what's a good deal? Because everybody's definition of that is different. So I wanna go through that of like, how do you determine what's a good deal to you? Because it's dependent on the location, the type of property, the condition, if you want turnkey or if you want to be fixing it up yourself. All of those things play into if it's a good deal to you or not. So the easiest way to know if a property is going to cash flow is the 1% rule. It's called the golden rule of rentals, been around for as long as people have been buying rental properties. And what that means is if the property rents for $1,000 a month, you want to be all in that property, purchase price and rehab at $100,000. That accounts for you having a mortgage, put down 20%, all the things that we're gonna account for, as you'll see, as we go forward. It's not always gonna be, oh, we have to get 1%, and especially in the last couple years, you're not finding 1% deals like you were. I mean, for decades before the last 2 years, Oklahoma City was the best place to find rental properties because you could find 1% deals all day long. I mean, you could get a 1% deal and pay full market value. I still think it's a great place to invest because compared to everywhere else in the country, the prices have gone up too. Oklahoma City is very stable. It's just very conservative as far as like returns go. Usually you're not gonna have the huge swings up or down. That's why the last 2 years were so weird. We had never had this huge swing up. It had just looked at a graph from 100 years, it just steadily went. But when you're looking at a deal and you're like, well, how do I know if this is a good deal or not? Easiest thing to do is to look at what's it gonna rent for, okay? And how you're gonna figure that out is, number one is Zillow. I know we all hate Zillow, but they're the only place that you can find good rent rates. Zillow is a good place, and there's another website called rentometer.com. And that will give you a good estimate on what it's gonna rent for too, that you can put in the area, if it's 3 bed, 2 bath, whatever it is, it'll give you a pretty good example of what it's gonna rent for.
How do you use HomeSnap? I think their valuations are getting better. They have rent.
I haven't used it in a while, but I remember that, yeah. There's a few different places, but really even when you're putting a place up for rent, the only stable place that every property manager puts their properties is Zillow. It just really is. So if you want to know what it's going to rent for, you're going to look on there. So again, we get a deal that comes across. It's 123 Main Street. It's 3 bed, 2 bath. We're going to go run comps just like you're going to on a listing. We're going to look in the neighborhood, look at similar properties, whatever. Zillow will tell you what they were listed for when they rented. So you don't know for sure that it rented at that much, but especially in the last 2 years, it probably rented at that much. So you can look on there on the map, it will show you, it rented for 1,000, 1,100, whatever. You can click on that one and look at the pictures and see how did that place compare to the place I'm looking at. That's gonna give you a good idea what it's gonna rent for. So from there, if you see that, okay, it rented at $1,100, you know in your mind right off the bat, between purchase price and rehab, I want to try to get this place around $110,000. So when you're talking to the seller, if you are, dealing with the wholesaler, wherever you found the deal, that's how you're kind of evaluating it right off the bat. That's just a quick and easy way to kind of run the numbers and know. So again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but many investors like turnkey properties that require no rehab work. If it's a property that doesn't need any work, you're typically gonna pay more for it, and that's fine. You're gonna pay a little more than what the 1% rule is, and that's fine because you're not gonna have all the maintenance costs that you would have if the property wasn't in good shape, if that makes sense. Okay. This is how you're gonna run the numbers to determine your cash flow and if a property is a good deal. So if you go On Google, there's a million of them. You can just Google free performa calculator. Google that, there's a million of them that will pull up. But the main thing is you need to know what numbers to plug in. So these are what I recommend plugging in for your performa. Now, everybody runs performas differently, and the main thing though that I have realized over the years is that on single family, you don't account for CapEx. CapEx meaning capital expenditures as far as like the roof replace, the hot water tank, HVAC, etc. The reason is because you want to subtract those from your purchase price. So this is an example. So let's say you're looking at a house, 123 Main Street again, seller wants $100,000. But you look at the AC, the furnace, the hot water tank, all of that, and you realize, oh wow, these are like 15 years old. So they may not be out yet, but they're getting old. And if you're buying it as a rental property, you need to account that you're gonna have to replace those things. So if he wants $100,000, your offer is going to be $100,000 minus the cost to replace those things. So I'm accounting for CapEx expenses up front in my purchase price. That's why I'm not accounting for them on a performa. But when you get into bigger multifamily commercial properties and stuff, they account for CapEx in there. So first one is vacancy. What vacancy means is that no matter what the property is, you're gonna have times where it's vacant. That's times that people are not paying you money. Just is what it is. They're gonna be vacant from time to time. So you want to account for that in your numbers. Your management fee, I normally factor in 10. It just depends on what your property manager is charging. 10 to 12% is very normal. So you want to factor that in. Maintenance, 8 to 12. Even if it is a brand new house, I am still accounting 8% for maintenance. Oh, I'm sorry, let me back up. When I say these percentages, that is subtracting that amount from the rent amount. So if it is, let's say it's $1,000 a month in rent, if we're accounting 7% vacancy, that's subtracting $7 a month from the take-home rent, because your performa is calculating what is your net income, what's your net cash flow of every property. So when I say these percentages, that's what it's subtracting off, and I'll show you an example on the next slide. So maintenance, 8 to 12. If the property is not in that great a shape and you're not doing a full rehab, always account for higher on maintenance, because you're just gonna have higher expenses. And then appreciation is the only one that adds on instead of subtracts, because typically for 100 years in Oklahoma City, appreciation's been 3%. So that's very usually accurate. So again, with how much prices have increased in the past 2 years, 1% rule has been harder to find. Ideally, you just want the property to cash flow positive, because again, we're looking at this as a long-term investment, not a short-term thing. So if when you run the numbers, if it is positively cash flowing you even $100 a month, it's a deal, buy it, go on. I'm really good friends with Omega. Their thing for the last year has been if they can cash flow 50 bucks, they're buying it. I mean, everybody's a little different on that, but again, if you have to look at these as a long-term investment. So even if it's not cash flowing you much up front, you're gonna get a lot more benefits of this as a long-term deal than a short-term thing either way. Don't be afraid to look in areas that you may personally not live. For example, as far as around here, Del City, Midwest City, South Oklahoma City down by the airport, the northeast side by the Capitol is another good area. You may not want to live there, but just because you may drive through there and think, oh, I wouldn't want to live here, that does not mean that you shouldn't buy a rental property there, because those are usually some of your best places to buy a rental. And then the last one is, this is also why it's important that you determine what's a good deal to you. Because I know some people that are like, I will not buy anything except for Edmond and Norman, that's all I buy. They will pay way more than I would ever pay for a property, but that's good for them. They look at it as a long-term thing. They just want a property that they're not gonna have headaches for. A lot of what I bought is on the northeast side. I mean, gosh, back in 17 and 18, I was buying houses for $20,000 over there that were renting for $800 Section 8. Nobody would buy over there. I was getting tons of deals from realtors that were like, I got a listing over here, but I don't even want to go to the listing appointment. Deal, send it to me, I will go. Funny story on that one though, the very first house I bought on the northeast side, my tenant got shot in the front yard the morning of closing. I drove over there because I hadn't gone in it yet, and so I was like, I'm gonna drive over there and just knock on the door the morning of closing, and I drive up and there's an ambulance in front of the house, and I'm like, what the hell? And I talked to the tenant on the phone and I was like, hey, are you, his name's Jerry. I said, hey, are you Jerry? He is literally on a gurney. And he's like, oh yeah, man, it was just another drive-by. I'll be all right. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess this is it. This is what I'm doing. But I love Section 8. Some people don't like it, but what I found with Section 8 is they don't want to lose their vouchers. So they're typically going to take better care of the place because they don't want to lose their Section 8 vouchers. Those are great. And it depends, but in certain areas, Section 8 will pay you more than a regular tenant will pay, especially if you've got a place that has more bedrooms. Like Omega does this a lot. They buy 3-bed houses and turn them into 4 or 5 beds. That's what they do. They rent them Section 8, and they can get so much more rent for these properties just by adding in more bedrooms. So there's different techniques like that that you can do also. Anybody have any questions? I'm gonna show you an example on the next one. Yeah.
I'll just say that I think the biggest knock I would put on realtors, the average realtor, is that they don't understand how to buy a rental property.
Yeah.
They think this is a cute house, a cute neighborhood, and they should bring really easy, and it probably will, but it could be a terrible rental property.
Yep.
So just knowing what questions to ask yourself before telling someone, because if someone, as a realtor, it happens all the time. People say, I think about buying a rental property. They know you're a realtor. And if you know what to ask them or send them, it just makes you so much more valuable. So,
Yep.
how cute it is, how good the neighborhood is, almost are inversely proportional to how good a deal it is.
Yeah.
So don't just send cheap houses to people. It's not how it works.
Yeah, and when I started this class, the first time I taught it was in Dallas, and it was teaching realtors how to work with investors. And so I'm trying to like work in both of like how you can be an investor, but then also if you learn how to be an investor, you're a much better asset to your clients. Because imagine if you're helping them buy and sell their personal place, if you can also help them buy rentals, you're turning a one client that just buying one house, their personal house, into as many rentals as they want to buy. So not only can it help you be an investor, but it can help you be more of an asset to your client. So as we're going through this, kind of think through that also. This is what a pro forma looks like. So it's called propertytracker.net. You have to pay for it though. I pay for it because it makes everything way more clear for me, and it also makes it to where when I send this to people, either people to looking to buy or whatever, they can easily read through this. Whereas some of the others, like I'd have to kind of edit them and like screenshot it, do this. This just prints it into a 1-page PDF for me, which is really easy. So as we're looking through this one, I've removed the address and everything, but it's 3-bed, 1.5 bath. 925 square feet, initial, this is the price that we're selling it at, $75,000. Your down payment's gonna be $15,000. Loan origination, all that doesn't really matter. I just put in $1,000 on them. The gross rent on this one is $875. So if we're doing our 1% rule, again, this is a great one because it's renting at $875 and you can buy it for $75. I sold literally hundreds of houses just like this for years. And these same houses are going for like $145, $150 now. It just is what it is. But rents have also gone up. So gross rent was $875. Again, this is what I was talking about. Vacancy losses was the -44. So you'll see where I account for all that over here. On this one, I only did 5% for vacancy. Management fee was only 8% for the management company they were using. I factored 8% for maintenance and then the 3% for appreciation. So then we've got down here, when you're plugging these numbers in, you're plugging in what are the property taxes, what's an estimate on insurance, that kind of stuff, and then it's accounting for monthly and annually here. So because I put in the percentages here, it's actually taking them out here. So it's showing us our monthly operating expenses are $287. Now, just because we're accounting for vacancy and maintenance that's not actually getting subtracted out of my cut that I'm getting from the property manager. That's just what I'm accounting for internally to know what to expect. So from there, our net operating income is $544. Our mortgage payment, $350. That's not accurate. Depends on what they're putting down. But so our cash flow is going to be $194. So as you see, like I said with the 1% rule, where this one was way above the 1% rule. And after I factor in all of my expenses, I'm barely cash flowing $200 a month. That's a pretty decent rental property. That's actually a really good rental property. It really is. And so again, like what Brett was saying, when people say, oh, I'm gonna buy 4 rentals and I'm gonna quit my job. I mean, a really good one, you're gonna make about $200 a month. So I mean, if you can live off of $800 a month, quit your job, but probably not. But this is how it's all broken down. And this was exactly what we sent all of our clients, how they could run them. And what would happen is people would get these and then they would run their own numbers. Once you get into it, everybody kind of runs their performance differently. But this is a very basic, this is what to account for. Does anybody have questions about this?
What was the name of the?
This one is propertytracker.net. I mean, you can really impress some of your clients with this too. I mean, if you have somebody that wants a rental property and you're telling them like, hey, look, we need one that cash flows. A lot of people don't even know what that means. A lot of people have no idea. They want a rental, but they don't know how to run numbers. They don't know any of that. But if you're coming into them showing like, hey, this is how we need to run the numbers to know how much you're gonna net every month, they're like, oh, wow, you really know what you're talking about. So right off the bat, you've built credibility and made yourself look great. Not only look great, you actually are helping them more than 95% of other realtors. I guarantee you, if you know this, you are head and shoulders above so many other realtors. Because a lot of our business was built from realtors sending us clients that were like, hey, I don't want to work with investors. This guy wants to buy a rental. I don't know what to do. I mean big agents, really big agents that had no idea how to do it. So if you know how to do this, this puts you in a whole different league. So before I move away, any questions on this? Yeah.
If this one was from a few years ago, you said, and if that was a good cash flow at $200 a month, in today's current market that's kind of riddled with wholesalers and everybody else picking up deals, what's a good, in your opinion, a good cash flow?
50 to $100. If it positively cash flows, it's a pretty good deal. I really think that investment home prices are going down. I mean, I've already kind of started to see it. Most of the big wholesalers around here were just selling to institutional buyers the last couple years. And almost every one of those institutions has pulled out. They're not just buying here, they're not buying anywhere. All of their money was coming from the stock market because the stock market was so high. The stock market is no longer high, so they don't have their money spout of all the money that they were using to buy. So I think that it's kind of started now, but I think that, I don't know that it'll ever go back to this, how it was, but I think investment prices are gonna go down. I mean, I've just seen it just on the emails I get from wholesalers where I hadn't seen a price drop on a house in forever, and I'm seeing them now where the same house is on there month after, or week after week, and they're lowering the price. So I think we're gonna start seeing more of that where you can get better deals. But also, when the interest rates go up and the real estate market goes down, rents usually go up because less people can buy a house, more people have to rent, makes rents go up. So there's a good chance that as this is happening, we're gonna have investment home prices going down as rents are going up. So, I mean, it could turn into a really, really great time again to buy. I mean, there's no such thing as a good or a bad time to buy, though, honestly. Because if you look at this long term over a 10, 20-year period, real estate prices go up. When prices go down, they never go down for more than 2 or 3 years. I mean, even in 08, they did not. Some places like Vegas and California and some of those, they stayed down for a while, but we didn't really even go down in 08 here. I think if you're looking at it long term, even the people that bought a house, if it was an investment property in the last year or two that they thought, wow, this is way too much, in 10 years, they're gonna look like geniuses for buying it. Just is what it is. If you stay in it long enough, it's gonna work out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, are most of the places that you're buying in Oklahoma City, or are you out in like third ring cities?
So everything I have in Oklahoma City right now is either on the northeast side or in Del City. But I haven't bought anything in Oklahoma City in over 2 years. When I sold, there was a lot of stuff that went on, so I first started sending mailers to Bentonville, Arkansas. That was where I was like, I love Bentonville, I'm gonna start doing it there. I realized there's a lot of people there too. And then I have some friends that do deals in Lawton, and they were like, hey, just start sending mailers for us too, and we'll just all buy here. So I started, in Lawton, you can still get deals for cheap. I mean, real cheap. But that's why I started buying there, because it was just so much cheaper to buy there. I mean, I can buy deals there for $35,000 that rent for $700. I mean, you haven't been able to buy deals here in years. So when I realized that, that's why I started doing stuff there. You just have to be really particular. Okay, so that was that. And then, all right, let's talk about different types of properties to look for, because again, we got to figure out what's a deal to you. So Airbnb versus long-term rentals. In my opinion, with Airbnbs, the biggest mistake people make with Airbnbs, and it is what is going to bite people in the ass so bad in the coming years, is they bought these like luxury or nicer type houses that they were like, oh wow, yeah, my monthly payment's $5,000 a month. That's fine. It's gonna rent on Airbnb for I'm gonna make $7,000 a month on Airbnb. This makes perfect sense. Well, it was when gas prices were still low and everybody was traveling, and we weren't adding like 30 new Airbnbs per day in Oklahoma City to the market. I mean, it is getting so oversaturated. And so I don't know that it's going to just like ever crash or anything like that as far as the Airbnb market, but and I have heard in Oklahoma City it's still going very strong. Everybody I know here is still renting them out for quite a bit. They're still going, but it's just basic supply and demand. There's so many Airbnbs added to the system every day. It's going to make the prices go down. It just will. There's no way it can't. But this is really bad in like Arizona and places like that. It's terrible. There's a website called AirDNA that you can look at how much places will rent for an Airbnb, how long they're staying vacant, stuff like that. And he was showing like Scottsdale, Phoenix, some of those major cities, how many Airbnbs there were and how many of them were vacant in July. They added so many, and they're all these like luxury places. Hey, I mean, the stock market's going down, inflation's to the roof. People aren't spending on luxury rentals anymore. So with Airbnbs, my philosophy is that if it will still cash flow as a rental, even if you're just losing like $100 a month or something on it, go ahead and buy it. But if it is like, it's gonna cost me $2 or $3 a month if this doesn't rent all the time on Airbnb, don't buy it, because there's a good chance you're gonna end up paying for that. And you don't want stuck with this huge mortgage payment on an Airbnb that's not rented. That's my philosophy. Everybody might have a different one, but that's like my cautionary tale. I like to be overly conservative on numbers. I like to be overly conservative when figuring out like, what is my worst case scenario? Every time I look at a property, my thought is, okay, what's my worst case scenario and what am I gonna do? And if you're factoring in for the worst case up front, it's okay. Worst case scenario happens, you've already accounted for it, but you're not blindsided by it. So always look at what's the worst thing that can happen with this and what am I gonna do when that happens?
Can I add something on that?
Yeah, of course.
I have an Airbnb too. There's a group here for Airbnb hosts, and two things I'm seeing is the higher the occupancy of the Airbnb or the potential Airbnb, the harder it's going to be for you to keep it rented. Because people are just not traveling in big groups anymore. So if you have a
Oh, higher occupancy, meaning how many people can see, okay.
in the Airbnb, those are the people that are struggling the most.
Yeah, I could see that.
And with the city, the permits, there's such a low number of the actual Airbnbs that actually went to get the permit. The city's about to crack down on that. So I think if you do find a property, like a 2-bed, 1-bath, or smaller, a lot of these people that bought 3, 4-bed houses thinking they cash flow that much money, they're hurting right now.
That makes sense.
There's going to be a lot of people that didn't go through the permitting process the city's about to go after them as well.
Do you think they'll give them like penalties and stuff for not?
Oh yeah, they'll be looking back at it from day one when they started it.
Wow. I figured they would have to go back and penalize people for doing that. I hadn't heard what they were gonna do.
That have gone through the permitting process are kind of pissed off right now because there's so many people that aren't doing it the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And they are taking business away from the people that have. So they will probably go back to whenever they started the
Wow.
I bet they do.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I could definitely see that. I have one that's in Lawton that I have it because they do graduations from Fort Sill 3 weekends out of the month. So it basically just stays rented like Thursday through Sunday. But I'm still making like more than double what I was making renting it. And then if that falls through, it's not a big deal to go back. But
And for a larger house, for that reason, it's great. But a lot of people, when people started going crazy and just they wanted to jump on the Airbnb bandwagon, they thought they could just buy a 4-bedroom house in the middle of some neighborhood that there was nothing else
and that was like
going on.
That was like the theory that everybody was pushing online was buy the biggest house you can because then you can make more money off of it. And I just remember seeing that and like, well, yeah, you can right now, but if one thing happens, it's not gonna rent for that long. Like it just can't. It just can't stay up. That's good to know though. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
On the flip side, let's go talk about Section 8. Do you have trouble finding property managers to take care of those?
No, there's a few that do a lot of Section 8, fewer that won't do Section 8. It is more work for the property manager, so you typically pay more. You're gonna pay more for a lease-up fee because they just have so much paperwork. There's a Section 8 inspection every time there's a turnover. So, they have to handle that. But with those Section 8 inspections, they're kind of like a really anal retentive VA appraiser. Like they're looking at peeling paint, they want window screens, they want like little stuff like that you wouldn't really think about, but that's all they're wanting. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely gonna be some property managers that don't wanna jack with them, but there's a lot that do, and they don't mind. You just pay a little more usually for Section 8. I mean, we really struggled with it because it is so much more work, but then we were like, well, we can just charge them more and deal with it. But yeah, it's hit and miss. I would say it's probably like 40% won't, 60% will. I might be wrong on that, but that was.
The average property manager would be between 10 and 12%. What would a Section 8 be?
They're typically going to be 12%, and then they're going to charge you the full month's rent to lease up, even though they're not really placing a Section 8 tenant is a lot easier, but there's also more work. You have all these people coming to you. There's a huge amount of people with Section 8 vouchers that are just fighting to get into any house they can. And then typically, the hardest part about Section 8 is you have a lot of people that they game the system like crazy. I mean, they know every way that they can get more money for this or get more money for that, and they're always trying to game it. And so it's, you have to, we had somebody that's all they did was dealt with Section 8 tenants because it was, they're always trying to work one over on you. But I kind of liked them. I didn't really mind them that bad.
You have it in repair of property manager.
Yeah, then you're not jacking with it at all. You don't really care.
Dealing with it, that's their business.
Yep.
That's what they do.
Exactly. And then you can set when you want them to call you for what price of repair. So like mine is $200. If it's over $200, call me. If it's under $200, I don't care. Just fix it. I'll see it on my bill every month, or like the report that they send. And I mean, you can set it whatever you want. I mean, I have some people that are like, I want to know about every single thing that happens. If there's a windowsill break, I want to know about it. Doesn't matter, whatever you want. I don't really care. I just, whatever. There's a lot of things that break that I'm gonna have to replace either way. I wanna know because I wanna make sure that I'm not getting screwed on the price that they give me. That's why I wanna know if it's over 200, because I wanna be able to look at it. Because I kinda know, oh, this is what this is gonna cost or not. So, but on the classes of properties, this is how you're gonna hear people talk about this, and this is also like when you are talking to your clients that may want to buy. So there's A class, B class, and C class. So A class is typically in good school districts / areas, new construction, newly rehabbed. A class typically has the lowest ROI on paper, but also lower maintenance. So examples of A class is gonna be Edmond, Norman, Yukon, Mustang, places like that that have in nicer neighborhoods in those areas is A class. B class is going to be Northwest Expressway, like Northwest Oklahoma City in general. Actually, a lot of areas around here are more B class. I mean, all around here where we're at is a lot of B class. And then on B class, that's what a lot of people like B class. That's like the majority of people want B class. Major mechanicals are less than 5 years old, may need some cosmetic updates, and B class typically gets closer to the 1% rule. So you may have to do a little bit of repairs to it, or you may have to fully rehab it, but it's in a good enough area. C class, what happens is when you're looking at performas or looking at rent to purchase price, when people first start looking at rentals, they're like, oh, I want that one, because it looks like the return is so high. And so they get all excited. Oh yeah, I want the C class one. And then you're trying to tell them like, look, yes, the returns look really good, but you're gonna have a lot higher maintenance costs. You're gonna have people breaking into it. You're going to deal with problems. And they say, oh, I don't care, I just want the high ROI one. Well, typically, when you look at the numbers after the end of the year, the C classes typically are gonna have a lower to pretty even returns to an A class. So you're paying more money for the A class, but your costs are not that high. C class, you're more likely to have somebody tear up your house, you know, stuff like that that's going to cost you money. So C class is typically, like we were talking about, like down by the airport, parts of Del City, Midwest City, I really consider Midwest City B class. Del City, parts of that are C class, but the Northeast side was C class forever, but it's getting a lot nicer. So that's kind of an example. And again, they're probably going to need a lot more work, and they look the best on paper, but usually not the best long term. None of these three classes are better or worse. There's not one that is, oh, that's the best one or that's the worst one. There's no such thing. Everybody has a different opinion on it. Everybody has a different goal for what they want, and all of them serve a purpose and can meet your goals depending on what you want. Okay, how do you find a good rental property? That's the number one question really. Very, very rarely are you gonna find a rental property on the MLS, a good one. You can find some A classes on there that you'll find that can work. But if you've got like a seasoned investor, somebody that owns a bunch of properties, most of the time they're not even gonna look at what's on the MLS. You can send it to them and they may look at it, but for me, if anybody sends me a property that's on the MLS, my first thought is what's wrong with it? Something is wrong with it. Because typically if it hits the MLS, it's already been passed over by other investors. Because most realtors at least know one or two investors that they can call if they get a deal that looks like a good investment, especially flips. Do not buy a flip off the MLS. Like, I mean, I can say with 99.99% certainty, you're not finding a good flip on the MLS at all. Because especially in the last couple years, there are so many wholesalers, investors themselves. I mean, a lot of our biggest clients when I own that company now market for their own deals. They're all going after their own deals themselves. And so if there is a distressed property that is a non-owner occupant, it is getting hit by 1 million people trying to market to them. So the only reason they're gonna list that on the MLS is because they want way more money than any investor is willing to pay them. That's why investors don't wanna look at the MLS, because they typically know it's gonna be way too high to make it work. So how are you gonna find them? The best place for you guys to find them is at a listing appointment. Seriously, I mean, I coach about 17 people one-on-one, and I've got about 50 people in my group, and all of them find their deals at listing appointments. If they're actively buying rentals or flips, they're finding them at listing appointments. One of my clients just bought one over here on 16th that lady was just like, look, I'm moving to New York. I know this place needs a bunch of work. I don't want to deal with it. I owe this and I want to net 100K. And it was an amazing deal, like unbelievable deal. And she was like, I can do that, but I'll buy it. Like, are you fine with that? Yeah, of course, as long as I net this. I mean, she's gonna make like 75 to 100K on this flip. Just a random listing appointment. So if you know what to look for, you can find great deals at listing appointments, because that's what a lot of agents are doing anyways. That's why they don't hit the market. They either do invest themselves, they know an investor. If it even smells like a good deal, they're calling one of their investors or a wholesaler or something like that, and they're just getting paid their commission and moving on. Because why would you deal with listing the house and going through all of that if you know somebody that's gonna pay cash and close in 5 days and you can get your commission right away? A lot of wholesalers and investors will pay you the full 6% too. They don't care. If you got a listing at 6%, they'll buy it, you get your full 6% and move on. So that's why they rarely hit the market. Off market from wholesalers and other investors who want to sell from time to time, some of the best deals I've ever found are from investors that own a ton of properties that they always have one or two from time to time they just don't want to jack with anymore. Just been a pain. They had a tenant trash it. They just want to get rid of it. Don't want to go through it. Those are great deals. So, I mean, if you know people that own a bunch of properties, that's a great way to find rentals or flips. And then the third one is you can do your own marketing. All of these wholesalers, investors that are finding deals off market, they all find them the same way. They are sending direct mail, they are cold calling them, they're text blasting them, or they have bandit signs. That's it. There's nothing like scientific to it. They're just hitting them over and over and over again. You hit them enough, you're gonna find some deals. Just is what it is. So if you want to find them on your own, you can do all of this. It does cost a lot of money. Contrary to what the people on TikTok say, that wholesaling's this easy way to, oh, you're just gonna look on county records and you're gonna make 100 grand a year doing this. It does not work like that. It costs a lot of money to do that kind of marketing, but it does pay off. And especially because you're realtors, you can be marketing to find deals and find listings at the same time. You have the best. It's a thing that wholesaler, so most of the time even when I get letters or calls, it is typically either a realtor saying, I would like to list your house, or I'm a wholesaler, or they're not saying they're a wholesaler, they're saying I'm an investor and I'd like to buy your house. So they're wanting to buy it for cheap. If you're a realtor, you can do either one. And so you can go to home sellers and say, hey, I don't really care what I'm not attached to the outcome. Whether you want to sell to an investor or you want to list on the MLS, I'll send you numbers both ways, you decide. You're offering everything that a seller would want in one spot. And that is what most realtors can't do, and it's what all wholesalers can't. Most wholesalers can't do it. They can't list them on their own. So you can do all of that by yourself. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. Any questions about this one? Doing your own marketing, find deals, we kind of went over that. Again, because you can do both. Direct mail, that's what I've done the most. It's what I still do. Again, Chris is here for that. List source, REI source, same thing. That's where you're running lists. You run the list for free, but you pay for the list once you download it, once you actually run the list, you pay for it then. But it's really cheap. I mean, I think it's like I don't want to get to lying. I can't remember exactly how much it is, but it's cheap. I still do that. You can run lists based on anything and everything you could ever imagine. I mean, I run them by neighborhood, non-owner occupant, meaning the person who lives there or the person who owns it doesn't live there. I don't want to go after properties that are their personal residence. They're usually not going to be good investment deals, and they usually want more money. So I don't jack with them. So I run them by neighborhood, non-owner occupant, verify the list based off of if it's a corporation that owns it, an LLC, or a personal name. I don't care, I do all of that. But you can get really specific. You can do it by, you only want 3-bed, 2-bath, you only want houses built in this year. You can even run it by when's the last time the property sold. So I mean, you can get very specific running lists. Cold calling and text blasting, both of these have dropped off in profitability since, I mean, in 2018-19, I was doing text blasting and the returns were unbelievable because nobody was doing it here. Nobody even knew it existed. And it was amazing. It was the best. But in the last couple of years, I mean, if you own a property, you're getting these texts. It has gotten absolutely out of control how many people are texting and cold calling for properties. I don't recommend that one. And then the last one is reach out to people in your sphere and past clients who own rental properties. Again, some of your best deals are gonna come from tired landlords. People are just sick of dealing with a property or two. Yeah.
I heard a stat recently, I can't remember what it is, so I'm gonna make it up.
Yeah.
But it was something like 95% of landlords own less than 3 properties,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. The vast majority of rentals are owned by somebody who used to live there, or his grandma's house, or something like that. So the tired landlord is a thing.
Yeah.
Even so, you just have to hit them when they are tired, when they have a kid moving out, when they have to spend money on an air conditioner. You hit them. It's just like any other market. You hit them when they're low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
And you get it. But yeah, I'll have to look up the statistic, but the vast majority own the small landlords. They're not big institutional buyers that will never sell.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I know a couple people that all they do is they market when they see a for rent sign go up. If it's a for rent by owner also, they just start calling and mailing those people because it's usually somebody that they're doing it on their own, so they normally have problems with it. They don't want to jack with it. You can get deals that way. Okay, this is the last slide, so we're almost done. putting all together. So first identify what is a good deal to you. Now that we've kind of gone over all that, you got to determine like what areas do you want to buy in? What price points are you wanting to buy in? All of that, like as far as do you want to do rehab to it? Do you not? Do you want one that's already new or flipped, or do you want to do that work yourself? You have to figure that criteria out for yourself, because until you know that, you're never going to pull the trigger. That is the number one thing I've learned working with investors, is until they know what they really want to buy, they will never buy. And that's the same thing even with when you're working with people. There is 1.5 million tire kickers that say, oh, I want to buy a rental property. And you're going to go show them 50 houses and they're never going to buy. Our criteria before they could even get on our list was, we need to know exactly what you are going to buy when it comes across. If this is what you want, like if we know exactly what you want when it comes across, and that you're gonna pull the trigger, and we would pull people off our list. Because if they're not serious, I don't even want sending them properties. And we didn't show properties at all. Our buyers were not allowed to see the houses unless most of them lived out of state, so they never came here anyways. But you can definitely buy or sell a house without ever looking at it if you know what to ask for. All you're really wanting to know, like we talked about earlier, was what are the years of the major mechanicals? That's the main thing. Hot water tank, HVAC, the roof, plumbing, electric, anything like that, you want to know. If they are newer than 5 years or newer, you don't have to account for replacing them. If they're older than that, I'm gonna account for replacing them in my price. And I'm just telling them up front, look, I've had things break earlier, I always account for this. They don't wanna sell it for that price, fine, I don't care, I'm moving on to the next one. Just is what it is. That's how I do it, because I would rather account for it lower than pay too much. And then get pictures to verify. So most of the time these sellers are gonna have a property manager, or they're gonna be going to the house themselves. So you can just have them take pictures of it, send you, the HVAC, the hot water tank, they'll have the little inspection stickers on them. You can see the years they were put on. Very easy. Roof, oh yeah, we replaced the roof 2 years ago. Okay, great, send me the paperwork from your insurance company. Great, I need to verify everything. If I can verify everything like that, I don't ever have to see the house, I don't care. They'll send me pictures of it and I go from that. In 2019, we sold almost 300 houses. I personally saw 12 of them total. Didn't go see them, I don't care. Send me pictures, I can get everything I need just from seeing them. And that was really, when I started the company, that was what I realized, was that why do investors want to go see a house? What are they doing? Every time I went with an investor to see a house, they were looking at the years of major mechanicals and looking at the roof. That's all they cared about. So I was like, all right, well, if I can just get that, then we don't have to look at it. So kind of went on a tangent there, but when you're looking at properties, that's all you want to know. When you're talking to the sellers right off the bat, if it's a property owner that owns it, I'm asking them right off the bat. A lot of times, if you just ask, well, has the roof or hot water tank or HVAC been replaced? Oh yeah, I replaced it. Yeah, they replaced it in 1992. So if instead you ask, have the roof, hot water tank, HVAC been replaced in the past 5 years? I don't know. I think we did it 3 years ago. Oh yeah? Well, can you look that up? I need to know. So that's what you're gonna ask for when you're looking at properties. If you don't take away anything else from this, rental properties are a long-term investment. Don't let anybody tell you differently. You're not gonna live off them right off the bat. They are a long-term investment. Third thing is, how are you going to find your first or next rental? Figure out what you're gonna do, what your criteria is. Are you gonna get on wholesalers lists? Are you going to, you can be looking on the MLS. There's deals that pop up across there, and depending on what your criteria is, that's how you're gonna find out. The fourth thing is start talking to local banks. That's where you're gonna get the best financing. I hate to say it, because I have great relationships with a lot of local lenders that are, like the bigger ones that you're gonna send your clients to. They are not the ones that you wanna use for investment properties. You don't want to. Their fees are way too high, and you're gonna get a lot more creative financing options with all the banks that start with First. First Liberty, First Security, Alliance, Citizens, there's a bunch of them, but you want to talk to the smaller local banks when you're buying either a flip, a rental, whatever. That's who you want to talk to. So you want to start talking to them up front because you want to know what your terms are going to be. What are they going to require down? You know, what's interest rates looking like now? All of that kind of stuff so that you have an idea. Same way, just take yourself through the buying process just like you would with your buyers. You're not going to go show your buyers without having them get pre-approved, so get pre-approved. Keep learning. There is so many resources that you can listen to. Like Brett was talking about Bigger Pockets. There's the Wholesaling Inc. podcast is not about wholesaling. I don't know why it's called that, but I was actually on that podcast and I didn't realize I was going to be on it. And it I woke up one morning and I had like 50 new Instagram followers and I didn't realize. I just did it for my friend Lauren and I didn't realize she was with them. But there's a ton of good resources. Bigger Pockets has their podcast, but then also the website. There's a ton of resources on Bigger Pockets website. If you want more hands-on help, I have helped so many people walk through these, like actually look at the deals for them, that kind of stuff. I'd be happy to help you. If you want these slides, the letter templates, or join my group, that's my email. And the last thing is, for anybody that's not friends with me on Facebook, I am putting on the first real estate conference that is not brokerage specific. It's Thursday, November 3rd. It'll be at Gaillardia. It is all people that are selling or doing real estate in Oklahoma City that are talking. There's not gonna be any out-of-state people coming in telling you like, oh, this is what I do in San Francisco. It is all people that are selling or doing a ton of real estate here that are gonna be talking at it. They're all panel discussions. And it's going to be extremely interactive because at the end of each panel, we'll do Q&A and we'll have questions. Everybody's gonna be at tables. So I have been working on this for months. I'm excited I can finally announce it. I haven't, tickets go on sale the first full week of September, so be looking for that. But if you add me on Facebook, or I have a group that is the OKC Real Estate Conference. It's a Facebook group and I'll release tickets there first. So if you guys want information on any of that or any of this stuff, that's my email. But thank you guys so much for being here. Yeah. Thursday, November 3rd. It'll be all day and you will have lunch and then Real Producers is doing a happy hour at the end too. Yes.
When you were going through the list of things that you want to know before you buy something sight unseen, you didn't mention anything about the foundation.
I mean, yeah, foundation is definitely part of it. I mean, because I'm getting pictures of everything. So, but if it's a rental, it doesn't really, the foundation, unless it's about to fall down. If it's a flip, I really need to know that. But on rentals, most of the time, these small local banks don't even care. They don't look at your inspection report or anything like that. So that's why I just don't really look at it that much. I do want to know because if it's something really bad, then I'll get it fixed. But if it's really bad, I'll see it in the pictures when they're sending them to me. Anything else? If you guys want to set up the list source accounts, to run lists, do any of that, Chris is here for that. If you guys have anything else, you've got my email. Reach out to me on Facebook or anything like that too. But thank you guys so much for being here. This was a huge group and you guys are very good. Thank you so much for you guys.